Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And today we are going to talk about an unapologetic value proposition. How do you tell others why you are the right person for a particular project, role, whatever it is, without the need to apologize? Can you relate? I can. And obviously, women mostly apologize a lot of times for, uh, who we are and why we're the right thing. But before we get there, I want to introduce my guest, Beate Chelette. Hi, Beate. How are you?
I'm happy. I'm excited. I can't wait for this conversation. It's going to be fast, furious, and powerful, I hope. And hopefully our audience will take some good things away from today.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll just do a quick intro. So Beate is a growth architect and founder of the Women's Code and a passionate advocate for women's empowerment. She's recognized for her vast contribution to women's leadership development and providing visionary women leaders with pragmatic strategies, blueprints, and tangible tools to enhance their leadership skills and multiply their impact. This is so much needed, Beate. We need more like you.
Yeah,
We need to clone you.
I've been trying. And I think that some of the challenges women really have, especially today, is that every time we feel like we make an advancement, inevitably something happens, and then there is another onslaught on women. I mean, I looked at, the Me Too movement. I mean, everybody can agree that no man should touch, grope, or do whatever with a woman. And yet we still cannot get past that conversation. We know women should get paid for the same job, the same amount of money. And we still cannot get past the conversation because somehow women are unqualified and demanding money that they shouldn't get, whereas all men, of course, are qualified. And then we have the conversation about the work-life balance, where women are bad mothers if they're not at home, and they're bad contributors if they're not at work. And then if they can't put the time in because they have to pick up their kids, then they're bad coworkers. And so the whole old business code is really designed to make women, it's like crazy making. And that's why you and I will talk about the unapologetic value proposition, because we're just gonna hopefully pop that heavy balloon that's hanging out over our head at least a little bit today.
Let's do it. And before we pop this balloon, let's start with you. And can you share your journey? And it's very interesting. I mean, you've been going through from 135K dollars in debt as a single mother to being a successful global business and eventually selling a multi-million-dollar deal to Bill Gates. So tell us a little bit about that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so I think I'm probably like most women that listen to your show, who are a little bit opinionated and have ambition and want to make something out of themselves. I'm originally from Germany, and so um but I always felt that I needed to be somewhere else. I never felt like that was my place. And I was always drawn to creativity. So I started out as a photographer and then became photo editor at Elle magazine in Germany. And so by the time I'm 23, I'm making good money. I'm a photo editor. And in everybody's book, I'm having a smoking hot career at a very, very young age. However, what happened is that I realized that when you're in a powerful position very early on, number one, as a photo editor, there is no next step. Like you're a photo editor, you'll always be a photo editor. There's no super duper photo editor, and no, I mean, you may be head off, but there
Mm-hmm.
was really no career path. There was no C-level position for somebody who does what I do in the business that I was in. And then my father got fired, and he was the CEO of a dairy company. And I realized that I was very much like him, and that I had fallen into the trap to believe that what people would be willing to do for me as a photo editor at Elle magazine, which is just about everything you can imagine, that wasn't because I was this amazing, wonderful person. It was because of the job I held. And when I had the realization, I said, I'm going to have to like let all of this go and start a journey to become the person that I can live with, the person that I want to be, and really morph myself into what I desired to be. And that's how my journey really started. And from there, I immigrated to the United States for the year abroad that has not ended decades later. And very quickly, I realized that women just have a really tough spot, because if you want it all, and it all basically just means you want a family, love, and a job. And all you do is get roadblocks. And especially here in the United States, when somebody says they're pregnant, you'd think that this is the first time the boss has ever heard of such an outrageous thing. I mean, when a woman gets pregnant, it's like this big drama. I was like, no, she did not. I'm like, is this the first time you heard about that women are responsible for keeping our race alive, that we're really the biological gender that pops out the babies? And that's when I first started getting really interested in that, because it was, back then you had to file for disability in the United States when you had a baby. Disability. I'm like, disability? That's an insult. Thank God they have changed it since to family leave and all kinds of other things. But back then it was disability. And that just showed me on where we were. And then I started my journey. I got laid off, had married, bad choice, found myself going through a divorce, and in a massive recession, had to figure out how I built my business. And over the course of 10 years, I managed fires, floods, riots, earthquake, a lawsuit, September 11th, a photographer that vanished in a tsunami, and had really massive catastrophes and tragedies in my life. And every time I thought I was going to get up, somebody came with a big frying pan and whacked me over the head. In September 11th alone, I lost $500,000 in 24 hours. I mean, my business was gone in a day. Wow. And then eventually had to figure out how to crack the code. And then when I did, I became the world leader with another crazy story to tell, and sold my business eventually to millions of dollars for Bill Gates.
Oh, good for you. Tell us how you do it. Tell us the secret.
Well, the secret really is that I think that a lot of times when we look at adversity or challenges in our lives, we think that that is an obstacle. But what it really is, it is a temporary defeat designed to have you actively look for the hidden opportunity in what appears to be adversity. So if I would not have gone through the divorce, would I have ever founded the Women's Code? Would I have, which is a lot of the work that I do today, helping women to, to kick butt and to be unapologetically themselves? And would I have not been in this lawsuit? Would I have been able to manage a sale to Bill Gates and negotiate that? Because I wasn't afraid of lawyers, because I fought with them for an entire year. So you learn that the adversity is a hidden opportunity. And now if you, instead of looking at this, why is this happening to me, to say, okay, I get it, this is tough, but where is the diamond in here? Like, what is it that I'm supposed to take away, take with me, take out, learn from it? So, because it's clearly directing me somewhere else where I'm not. So the pain has to have a certain threshold for you to get out of your pattern, right? Because we're all running all patterns in our lives. And so when I lost this photography business and I lost my photo production business, the story really was very different, because I remember, I'm standing in the desert here in Los Angeles in the dry lake bed, and I had my first music video that I was producing, and I was elated. I'm like, finally I arrived. Finally, I'm doing the music video. That's what I wanted to do. I used to watch MTV. I'm finally breaking in this, and I hear this voice in my head, you need to go bigger. And I'm like, bigger than this? because I was a producer, right? So I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm making sure everybody shows up. The grip truck is here. The models are arriving. The director of photography, the stylist. I mean, and suddenly there's a whole little city built in the dry lake bed, and I'm orchestrating all that. I mean, what is better than that? And I hear this voice that says, you need to do more. You need to do better. And I didn't listen to the voice. And then September 11th came and wiped out my production business in one day. So I did not make that choice because I wasn't listening to the voice. So the decision was made for me, and it was a lot harder than if I would have made that decision. But what it forced me to do then is build up the stock photography syndication business. So I saw an opportunity, but I hadn't put enough attention to it because I was so busy with the production, so busy with the photography representation. So I just did this opportunity that turned out to be the gold. I kind of like did that a little bit on the side. And so when the other things fell away, I focused entirely on that. And that is when, we suddenly gained a lot of steam, and we became very well known very quickly, but I had no money because I just had lost all this money in September 11th, and I had lost the remaining money in this lawsuit by a employee who had betrayed me and started her own business just without me and had invoices that were due to me paid to them. I mean, it was really gnarly. And so I'm sitting here and I'm out of money. And in my desperation, I wrote a letter to the President of the United States. This is a true story. And the only reason I wrote a letter to the President of the United States, that just shows you, A, now how desperate I was, and B, what a nag my mother-in-law was. And my mother-in-law back then, she would tell me, you need to write a letter to the president. He's your president. He's the number one guy in the country. Why wouldn't you go to the top guy? And I'm like, that is just so ridiculous. But she would not stop. And eventually I wrote the letter just so I could get her out of my hair, because I wasn't going to have one more conversation about writing a letter to the president, understandably. Next thing I know, I'm out of money. I mean, I'm now really $135,000 in debt. Fly to Germany, visit my dad. My dad had a stroke. My father did not have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer. My father dies within 6 weeks. I'm at the funeral in Germany in this beautiful, setting with the Baroque church behind me and the valley. And my phone rings. It's my office in Los Angeles. We've now been served a notice, so now I'm losing the house on top of everything. So I'm standing there, and I raised my fist against God, and I fell down to my knees, and I yelled at him, and I said, I mean, seriously? What is this all about? I mean, what else can a person possibly bear? And I yelled at him. I said, if you have a plan, this would be a really kind of good time right now to fill me in, because this is game over in everybody's book. I mean, I fought for 10 years. I raised my daughter by myself, deadbeat ex-husband, alcoholic, pathological liar, and I'm fighting and fighting, and I have no more fight left. And I surrendered. Come back, get a letter from the White House.
Wow.
The president sends his best wishes. Now, the president of the United States never saw this letter. Let's just be really clear about that, right? But it put me in touch with the Small Business Administration, with the top dog, with the top guy, because they also got a letter from the White House. And then that guy said, I got to speak to somebody who is nuts enough to write a letter to the President of the United States instead of picking up the phone and calling me. And so that's how I got my meeting. And then he said to me, I'll put in what you put in. In the meantime, I had written my business plan. So, these are really like all these lessons along the way. You got to be prepared. You can't just sit there and cry. And if something outrageous comes, just do it, because you don't know where it leads. I mean, who would have known that the turning point was a letter to the President of the United States because my former mother-in-law was such a nag? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's a turning point. And then they helped me to find a bank that they backed and guaranteed my payback. And I freed up my line of credit with a 10-year fixed loan that brought me to break even 3 months later, that brought me to become the world leader in my category in 18 months. And that's when the Bill Gates company came and says, show us how you do it. And I said, absolutely not. You wanted to buy it. And they said, fine. How much do you want it? I said, millions. And they said, okay.
Wow, this is an incredible story.
It is nuts,
Really.
isn't it? Like when I tell it, it's like, did that really happen to me? Yes, it did. But I think for the purpose of talking about women leadership is, what would I say now looking back, right? So if we now look back and I tell the story, everybody goes and says, well, 10 years of hardship for millions of dollars in the bank. You buy yourself your house, you put your daughter through college, you don't really have to worry about money anymore. Everybody would say that's worth 10 years. Wait until you're in it. And when you go to the cheap stores and you spend $100 and you feel so guilty because you don't have it. When, I lived in a place that was going into foreclosure, where the woman had moved out with a 1.5-year-old, not knowing when it was going to get evicted. My daughter, who slept on an air mattress for 4 years of her life because I couldn't afford a mattress. So these are the things that I had to do to survive. But now looking back, I will say that all of these events shape who we become, because when I ran a global company and I licensed into 79 countries in the world and I had contracts everywhere, I was unafraid because I had been so afraid for so long before that this was nothing compared to what had happened to me previously. And when the Bill Gates company came, it's like, what do I have to lose? I'm not intimidated.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go to the ordinary woman working in a tech leadership role, not facing, those really extreme challenges you were facing. What do you think she needs to do? I mean, first, maybe what kind of challenges you think those women face, and what are the elements? I mean, you do. I do want to talk about your 4 elements to kind of create a compelling pitch. But let's first talk about the challenges you think like women in tech leadership face, and
yeah,
how
I
to
mean,
help
I
them.
think that women in technology and women in leadership, and I'm on the uh, programming team for the Women in Technology Hollywood. And so the challenges the women really are having are very much about establishing that women are smart and qualified and have a right to be there. Another challenge is this perpetual conversation around women being emotional, which is ridiculous. So when you have a child and your child cries, you're going to tell your child, don't be so emotional, toughen it up. Well, we know where that leads to lifelong
Some
issues.
people do, but that's not a good thing.
No, absolutely not a good thing. And then you have to prove your value all the time. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that women have, especially in technology, is that once a man has proven his value, he can do basically whatever he wants. When you have a woman, the woman has to prove in every meeting over and over and over again that she has a right to be there. That probably is the one thing that I've seen where I find the biggest discrepancy. Once you're in with the guys are in with each other. Just, they back each other up, no big deal. But with women, it's just not like that. And then the other thing I think women have to overcome is the issue that they themselves don't have other women that support them, because we still operating from this cave woman behavior that we believe that if we don't have a provider, and that's like literally a DNA embedded old behavior pattern. That's not even a conscious thought, that if we were not to have this man taking care of us, that we somehow would not be surviving. And so this, that was true when John and Jake and Mike and Jimmy went out to hunt the mammal. But we don't hunt mammals anymore. So if one of our guys dies and we have no provider, and women back then, we had to take another woman's man because that was our only chance for survival. But women still, to a large degree, act like that. And like, you look at this, you go, seriously, that's what needs to be done. Why do we need to take each other down? Well, just in case, we need somebody to hunt the mammal down for us. And so that's why I created the women's code, because I wanted women to understand, what is this women's code that we need to have with each other? And then we can go out and we can address the real issues, which is inequality, which is the lack of recognition that we have a right to be here. I mean, we're 51% of the American population alone. We are half of the world. I mean, since when are we a minority? 51% in math, I believe, is not technically the minority. I think it's the majority.
Yeah. And you mentioned, you emphasize the importance of having an unapologetic value proposition. First, what does it mean?
The unapologetic value proposition is really designed to help you to understand on how is it that you can step into who you are and own who you are without having that constant need to go in and explain yourself. Like, how do I show up? How do I know what I need to do? How do I know what I need to say? How do I know what I stand for? And then if somebody sets a trap for me, how do I not step into it? Because a lot of this, right? A lot of this is designed for women to take the bait. So if you actually take the bait and you step into the trap that is set of saying, I'm not emotional, you already lost. Because you already taken the bait that somebody set out for you. Because the minute you're in a meeting and you say to somebody says to you, why are you acting so emotional? And you say, I'm not emotional. Why do you even say that? That's it. It's already over. Classic women response, cannot be taken seriously. So for anybody listening, I have a very, 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 very simple way to combat that. This is what I want you to do. The next time you hear this, you stop, you put your head back, and you do this. Oh God, Johnny, good one. Oh, Jesus. So what I was saying, and you go right back to what you said. There is no recovery from that for a man. He will never say this to you because he looks like an absolute moron. It's a checkmate move. That's all you have to do. Put your head back, start laughing. If you can squeeze out a tear, even better. And literally just make a, oh God, that was so funny. Good one. And go right back to what you were saying. It's a trap. Don't take the bait.
That is easier said than done, I have a feeling. I mean, it takes some serious acting skills, because at the moment when someone tells you something inappropriate, it's not funny. You're usually, I used to be angry or insulted.
That's the bait, though. You have to think about it this way. If a man can, with one simple sentence, why are you acting so emotional, take you out, why wouldn't he use that? He has to do nothing other than to push a button. and then you on self-destruct. That is a lot of power to give to somebody else. That is not happening in my world. In my world, I have an incredulous look, and then I'm going to go, oh my God, this is actually funny. Like, people in the year 2023 still do that? Like, you actually just said that? That's funny. Dude, like, you may have to like fast forward your, time machine from Back to the Future to today. People don't really say this anymore. So if I come from that position of that, I'm laughing because it's funny that somebody so outdated uses these like trite, ridiculous things, he's going to feel the way he set me up to feel. And he cannot recover from that because they haven't caught up to that strategy yet. It's a strategy. So if you look at it like a strategy that you simply learn, and then you go, okay, this button was pushed, this strategy runs. It's much easier. But that is why I call it unapologetic. Is because I don't care if that is actually what I want to say, because I tell you what I want to say. I want to go over and punch him in the nose and tell him he's a moronic idiot and to get the heck out of here and let the big girls manage the job while he's out there whining. Oh, so emotional. But I can't really do that. So I have to come in, and I have to come in from a perspective that they never see me coming. That's power. And that's what women need to really learn, is to take the initial response of our gut response. How dare you? You cannot say that, because that is a pre-planted trigger response set up for you to fail and to demonstrate that you're not a leader. Because a leader will, like, if somebody would say to a Mark Cuban, what do you even know about business? Mark Cuban would maybe roll his eyes. It doesn't even justify a response. That's where we have to come from. If it's so stupid that it doesn't justify a response, make them look and feel so stupid, because it doesn't even.
Okay.
It doesn't even.
And how do you do that without being seen as arrogant?
With humor. With humor.
Right.
With humor. Mm-hmm. That's why it has to be funny. Because if it's funny, then other people, like the smart men in the room, understand exactly what you're doing. I had a friend, who was a mentor to me, and he said to me, he says, when you do that blonde thing, he says, it's so cute and I love it. He says, but I don't buy it for a minute.
What do you mean, the blonde thing?
Like when I was younger, I definitely used looking good, dressing up, going to the bar. I used all these things because I needed meetings. I needed people to take me seriously. So part of the strategy was that I was very charming, in that occasionally I was confused. No, I'm really never confused, but I was.
Yeah, looking confused. Yeah.
Yes. So they would explain it to me, because the whole goal is to extract information that I can then use to go back and get my things in order so I can grow my business. So I think that this is really the challenge, is why I created the Unapologetic Value Proposition, is, and which brings us to the first element, which is your super skill. You got to know what you're really good at. And I'm very good at in listening and having people open up, and people telling me stuff, and people trusting me. I have great honesty. I'm also very confidential about what I hear and what I share and what I don't share. And so that gave me credibility. So you need to look at, what are you really good at? I'm very good at taking all the puzzle pieces, and when I talk to somebody, I can find them and I can put them together, and they say, oh my God, how did you do that? I'm like, doesn't everybody know that? Well, that's my super skill. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is that we are trained in the super skill part specifically, that from our educational system, and how we learn, it's always set up to, you need to learn existing information, you need to retain existing information, you need to regurgitate existing information, and then you get an A. And so what happens in school or throughout college is that the stuff that you're not good at, the teacher always say, you need to learn that. But you're not good at it and you don't like it. Like if you are a scientist, why do you need to be good at writing essays? That's ridiculous. That's funny. So you have to have that same thing when you go with your super skill into your work. And let's say you are in technology and you understand how to, get AI to do most amazing things. And somebody says, well, you need to write a better essay, or your PowerPoint presentation is not good enough. You need to laugh. And your answer is, dude, the machine and I, we are besties. You need somebody to write you a saucy essay. Let's go to and find a freelancer who can use the right words. But I'm going to be using the machine to do that. And if that's not saucy enough for you, that's on you. But this being derailed every time somebody comes and confronts you on a skill you don't even have, you don't even need, you don't even want, that's completely irrelevant, just because it's a random performance review thing. That's what's unapologetic about it. It's like when somebody says, well, your Excel spreadsheet need to have pivot tables. You talking to me? So you want me to do what? I don't think so. Susie is the best in the whole company with pivot tables. Susie and I have an understanding. I bring Susie in when I need pivot tables. Why are we even talking about this? It's ridiculous. It's funny. It's a trap. Don't take the trap. Mm-hmm. And that's what leadership is about. Do you think Mark Cuban does Excel spreadsheet with pivot tables? Of course not.
I hope for him he doesn't.
My point. So you always have to go back to, no, that makes absolutely no sense to me. That's not what I got hired for. That's not what I'm good at. That's a really bad spend of my time. But why don't I help you to find somebody who can do that if that's important to you? But it ain't not me.
Yeah, I think some of it, sorry for stopping you, but some of it is somehow ingrained in the corporate culture of, you mentioned the performance reviews, like, well, I have to give you some positive feedback and also I have to give you some improvement areas, and kind of treating everyone kind of on the same, I guess, the same way, and wanting everyone to be, okay, you need to find someone for you to improve on, and let's work on that. Trying to fix people instead of just, you said, like, find your key areas where you really shine. And
well, but that's part then of you going into that performance review, because, in the performance review, you're also being asked, what you do well. So that's, you have to learn how to precede that conversation. So instead of somebody who has no idea what your actual day-to-day job is, because they're the manager's not in your job. They kind of have an idea, but not really to the detail you do it. So when you walk into this, in the self-evaluation, you're going to say that I have found that the area of improvement that I really would like to lean into is, in addition to AI, to learn how to spot deep fakes. Like, I'm just riffing here.
Yeah.
Right. So that way, then when you're sitting in this performance review and she goes into the improvement thing, you immediately take charge of the conversation. You said, I'm so glad you asked this question, because I was thinking about what's best for the company. Now that we're using so much AI, right? Can we just have a conversation about this? Now that we're using AI, I'm thinking we really need to improve in this particular area, and I'd love to take that on. Now you look like a queen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's the preceding. But what do women do? They walk in there. They're already nervous. They already know the bonus is on the line. They already know the guy is a jerk. They already know that the rumor mill has it that 3 people are being laid off. You're already nervous. You walk in and you look like a mouse. instead of walking in and owning that room and saying, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I actually think there's a couple areas of improvement. Which of these sound best for you? Because I think we need to really focus on one area that will bring the company the greatest benefit. Don't make it about you, make it about the company, make it about the job, make it about him. Like, what are the projects you're working on? So which of the things that I could improve on would help you more to do your job better?
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. Those are great tips. And let's move on. I mean, you mentioned the first key element. What are the next
Yes.
one?
So once we have our super skill, clearly we talk about, you got to know your numbers and you got to know all the details. So when you now go to your office and your pitch, right? So there's a couple, so everything I talk about is very strategic. You have to make a business case for whatever you say. So what we just talked about, when you go into your boss's office or for the performance review, that you're going to have a strategy and you're going to have the numbers ready. So you say, then our competitors are putting, according to what I could find, $1 billion into the development of AI, which is a crazy number. But what my research showed is that they're a little weak on these areas. So what I'm thinking is that if, as we are thinking about what can I improve to bring more value to the company and you and make your job easier, then would be if we can take some of our budget and then use it to this, because that's what they're missing. So now you know your numbers. Mm-hmm. So that's a really compelling argument. So you can't just say things like, well, I think I should get a promotion. Well, why do you think you get a promotion? Well, because remember that idea when I came in and I had done the research of what the company does, and then we put some energy and effort in the deep fakes, and now we are the number one company that is being hired and got this $10 billion contract by the government to, build this deep fake framework. I think that qualifies for a bonus. So that's how you have to detach yourself from the emotion of what it means, the story of what it means to the business case. And then it makes it much, 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 much easier. Then the next element after that is your goals and objectives. So when you go into a meeting of any kind, you need to be clear, what am I trying to achieve? I would never go in a performance review without having absolute clarity on what is it that I want to walk out with. So you need to know, what is it where I want to go to? So do you want to have the director position, and now you need to reverse engineer from where you are to how to get there? Then that's a strategy. That's a goal and an objective. I have a colleague of mine in Women in Technology Hollywood, and when she took her job, she told her boss, I want your job because I want you to want your boss's job. That's how she started her interview. That's a goal. That's an objective. And she is in the VR for Microsoft, in the gaming part of things. So, just to keep reiterating that, it is, we're in no way or shape helpless. We have to learn how to be a little bit more clear, because that leads us to the next element. And that is, you got to be able to pitch it. You got to be able to pitch yourself. I did an insights paper, The Future of Leadership. And when I talked to a bunch of CEOs, they said all the same things. They said, I want you to tell everybody that they need to be ready to come into my office. And when I say, where should I put you, that they are able to answer what it is they know how to do, why they do that better than anybody else, what I'm getting out of this, and what the value is that brings to the company. It's very simple. I'll give you an example. After I sold my company and they gave me a full-time job that I took on for like another year and a half. And I had one of my team members came into my office and she says, I want to be promoted to a manager. And I said, what will you do as a manager that qualifies me giving you this promotion? Well, promote me and then I'll tell you. I said, that's not the way this works. You have to demonstrate first that you have the abilities so that I know what I'm promoting you to. When I left, she was promoted and she didn't last. And she was a horrible boss. Yeah. So these are things that you really need to be clear about. And so, to sum it up, so you got to know your super skill. You have to know how to walk in and make a compelling case, knowing your numbers, and you have to be ready to pitch this at all times to everybody.
Wow, thank you so much. So much insights and value here. And because we kind of talked, I can't believe how time flies, and it's like we could talk forever. And I know you're busy and you probably, have to go. So one last thing. I mean, all those things that you mentioned are extraordinary, but requires a lot of strength, confidence, right? And you build through hardship, you build your strength, enormous courage, enormous confidence. But not, I mean, the women I meet, they're not as strong as you and as confident. And how do you get to a place where you actually feel comfortable to even do those things?
You find a role model and you design who you want to be. And then you become that. And you look at what is somebody like that. So let's say somebody listens to this and says, I want to be as confident as Beate is. Then you need to see what I do or what I did. I do a lot of mindset work. I went to tons and tons of conferences. I put myself out on the stage. I learned how to speak. I do a ton of podcasts. I read. I'm an excessive information junkie. So you don't get here without the work. But the work is determined by, is this really something that you want? Because you need to become that. It's not handed to you. It is a transformation journey that you take step by step by step. What would somebody like me do in a meeting when John just said, you're so emotional? Beate would put her head back and laugh. Feels weird. I'm going to do it anyway. I have nothing to lose. Because the last time he said that, I took the bait, I didn't get the promotion. That's not going to happen to me again. Did it work? Did it not work? Do I have to adjust my laughter? Do I have to be more comfortable with that? But it's all about taking that fear of not being liked, rejected, ridiculed, not being the good girl, saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. I mean, the stuff that women have to excess. And you got to learn how to keep that in check. You have a right to be here. You have a right to be here. You have a right to speak. You have a right to do what you do. Everything you've done got you to this point, and now you decide what is your next point.
Wow, it's so inspiring, Beate. And how can women see what you do and have you as their role model?
Well, reach out. Don't be a stranger. Go to thewomenscode.com. That's my website. Get the book, Happy Woman, Happy World, which is available everywhere on Amazon as an audiobook, as a printed book, and as an ebook. And reach out if you heard something, or schedule an uncovery session. Go to uncoverysession.com. Make sure you mention the show. And I'll be happy, to have a business growth advisor talk to you, and we'll see how we can help you to do that. But there's a lot that can be done. You're not helpless. We're all in this together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Beate. It was such a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast. Excellent.